Hello again, everyone. In this video, we're going to walk you through setting up your FreeNAS server to operate as a target for remote backups from Windows Backup, Mac OS X Time Machine, and PCBSD Life Preserver. The process is very similar to what we've outlined in our Volumes and Shares video. I've already created a share that I'm going to use, though I'm going to walk through the creation of each share as I go through the corresponding steps. Before we can create shares, we have to make sure that our user and group permissions are configured correctly. Essentially, the backup operation won't work properly unless the user is either the owner of the volume or the member of a group that is configured to have read-write access to the volume. So, we'll create a group by going to the sidebar and clicking on Account, then Group, then Add Group. A new dialog will appear in which I'm going to create a group named Backup Users. Then click OK. Next, we're going to create a user from the same drop-down menu. Click on User and then Add User. We're going to name ours Backup Guy. We're also going to make backup users the primary ID. Then enter your name and password and click OK. Now that we've finished configuring our users and groups, let's configure for Windows Backup. To use Windows Backup to a network drive, you need to have Windows 7 Professional or Ultimate. Home Premium and lower do not support this feature. Navigate back to the Services tab and enable the CIFS service, and then configure it so that you have a recognizable NetBIOS name. We're going to name ours Windows Backup. After this, enable any other features as you normally would. With that taken care of, we can create our Windows share. Navigate to Sharing, CIFS Shares, and add a CIFS share. I'm just going to name mine, but it's worth noting that you could consider guest access and skip the authentication, if that kind of security works for your network environment. Now we are going to create a ZFS dataset for Windows. But first we need to change the permissions of the backup disk that we're going to save onto. Click on Storage, then Change Permissions. Now change the owner to Backup Users, then allow the group to write onto the disk. We are changing this setting because it makes it possible to access and save onto the volume. Then click Change. Next, click on Create ZFS Dataset. Then in the new dialog, make sure that the correct volume is chosen and name the dataset. I'm going to name mine Windows Backup. Click Add Dataset. After creating the dataset, click on Change Permissions and change the owner to the group and user that we created. So we will change the user to Backup Guy and the group to Backup Users. Then in Mode, we are allowing the group write capability. Also, change the ACL from Unix to Windows. Click Change. Now, let's connect to the share through Windows. Once logged into my Windows client, I'm going to connect to the share through the network browser and then authenticate as the user I set up in FreeNAS. At this point, we're just looking to get the network address of the directory we're going to be putting our backup data into. Once the folder loads, copy the address of the directory. Open the Windows Control Panel and do a search for Backup, and then Create New Backup. If you haven't configured backups before, your dialog window will look a little different, but the option you want is the one that creates a new backup, and after that you'll get the same dialog as I do when I click Change Settings. In the Change Settings dialog window, you'll be able to set your backup location and configure a network location as your backup target. This is where the path you copied is going to come into play. Paste that into the network path location or browse for it if you didn't grab it. Your user and password will once again be the ones you configured in FreeNAS and will be used to authenticate your backup. After you've entered this information, you can click Save Settings and Run Backup. The backup will begin and you can see the files beginning to copy into my directory. This is going to take some time, so at this point we can move on to configuring FreeNAS for Apple's Time Machine. For Time Machine, you need to enable the AFP service. In the Services tab, enable AFP. Click on AFP Settings and we're going to change the server name to FreeNAS_backup and make sure local access is checked. Then click OK. Next, go into AFP Share and input the name of the share. We're going to call ours Mac Backup. Then scroll down and click on Disk Discovery, and then change the Disk Discovery mode to Time Machine. Then click OK. Next, go to the Storage tab and create another ZFS dataset. This time we're going to call it Apple Backup. Then click Add Dataset. Next, click on Change Permissions and once again, change the owner, user, and group to Backup Guy and Backup Users. Change the group access to Write and click Change. On the Mac you want to back up, connect to the AFP share using the FreeNAS user we set up earlier. Once connected, open your terminal and enter this command exactly. Defaults write com.apple.systempreferences tm show unsupported network volumes 1. Now, when you go to the Time Machine window, you'll see the FreeNAS AFP share as an option. You will have to re-enter your FreeNAS username and password that you used before to connect to the AFP server. Select it like a normal Time Machine drive and configure any other Time Machine settings. You have now backed up your Mac to FreeNAS. Last but not least, let's look at backing up your information from PCBSD using Life Preserver. Life Preserver has much different functionality from its Mac and PC counterparts. The core difference between them is that you will not have to turn on or create a share. The process to configure your machine for Life Preserver is very specific and must be done in this exact order. Otherwise, it will not be able to connect. First on the list is to go to Sharing from the top toolbar and turn on rsync and SSH. Next is to create a volume for BSD. Scroll up to the Storage tab on the top toolbar and then click on the Create a Volume button. Now name the volume. I'm naming mine BSD Backup. Choose your drive and use either UFS or ZFS and then click Add Volume. Once complete, we are next going to create a user for the account. Scroll over to the sidebar and click on the account, then User, then Add User. A new dialog will appear. Then you will want to name the user. I'm naming mine Backup Guy. Next, we will have to create a home directory. It is important to get this in the right order or it won't work. The path will be /volume/username. In our case, we're putting into home directory mount BSD backup backup guy. Then you need to put your name and password in and click OK. That's it on the FreeNAS side. Now let's go to PCBSD and use Life Preserver. Open Life Preserver by either going to the control panel or clicking on the Life Preserver icon at the bottom right of the screen. A new dialog will appear, and you should click on Get Started, then Next. Now in the Add New Life Preserver dialog, you will need to input your hostname or IP address for FreeNAS, then the FreeNAS username. Note that SSH is port 22, and in Life Preserver you are going to need to open the SSH port 22 for outgoing traffic in the firewall exceptions, or turn off your firewall. Now click Next, and you will be asked just how often you want Life Preserver to back up your information. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to click on Backup Weekly. Click Next and Next again to officially start Life Preserver. It will then open a new dialog and ask for your username and password. It is the password you used when you created your user account. Once that is entered, it will pop up another dialog box and will start the backup process. That's it! Now you have the tools to create backups on your FreeNAS device for any Apple, Windows, or PCBSD operating system. Thank you for watching.